Gabby, Meadow. We are so excited. Thank you for coming on the podcast. So I had the unbelievable pleasure of coming on your podcast, Thoughts May Vary, a little while ago. And I was like, oh, I need y'all to meet my bestie.
She texted me pretty much immediately after leaving. I was like, we're bringing them over. You have to meet.
I was like, I'm obsessed with them. You need to meet these ladies. They're amazing.
And you sat down and we bombarded you with the same thing.
Yeah.
We read your book and we're like, so you don't know, but we're best friends.
Yeah.
We've already decided.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, we are.
It's karmic.
Yeah. And what I was so struck by throughout our conversation was the synergy between the two of you. Mm-hmm. You are both so, and I think Vanessa and I talk about this a lot, how healing our relationship has been in terms of just the reverence that we hold one another's difference and the way that we just like are really, I don't know, often in awe of the way the other moves through the world, even though it can be very different from the way that we each experience the world. And I felt so much of that with the two of you, the way that you were so like loving with each other and just sort of like affirming of one another and what you were feeling. I was, you know, and I'm a couples therapist, so I'm watching very closely like
People typically think we're a couple actually. When they meet, they're like, oh, I just assumed that you guys
I thought you were gay today. I'm like, yeah, I know. Everybody thinks
I was gonna say every time we do a photo shoot for the podcast, it's like our engagement
couples.
shoot.
Yeah, it's engagement shoot.
Totally. Yeah. But can you guys give us a little of the background of your friendship? I don't even know that I got it.
I feel like I always tell it from my perspective. Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, sure. I had just left NAMI in the nonprofit world and was consulting for a brand called Mad Happy that wanted to bring mental health into their ethos. So I was kind of a liaison for them. And we were building out a blog to be like an educational resource center and toolkit and have guest writers and blah, blah, blah. And one of the co-founders at the time said, hey, I have a good friend from college that's a great writer. Like, I think she'll write about her mental health. Just hop on a call. We were on the phone for like 3.5 hours, fell in love. I remember stalking you on Instagram and being like, this is the coolest girl I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, why does she like me? Just instantly kind of knew and clicked. And I think we were both, the way you described your dynamic and that reverence for your differences and similarities, like we were both craving that so much and really just called it in so naturally. And it just started to flow. And then you know how the podcast came to be because I have no memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's burned in my brain. But yeah, she mentioned, I mean, at the time I was living in New York, I was working at Architectural Digest, and through my writing, I mean, I've always been a writer my whole life. Like before when I was little, I didn't know what I was doing, but that was the only way I could get things out. And I would write these like really melodramatic, like really long journal entries and like, it was like, dear diary. Like, and that's just how I was. And so when I was throughout my like early years of my career as a journalist and being at AD, I was always trying to find the intersection of humanity. Even if I was like, okay, let's talk about this fucking paint color. Like, why'd you pick this paint color? Like, who are you? Like, what? Who's the
Psychoanalyze the paint color. Yeah.
And obviously, there's only so much you can do that, you know, at a specific magazine. And so I was trying to like find that intersection in my writing. And so when I got the call to write about, you know, my personal mental health journey, I was like, whoa, that was a very big wake-up call for me of like, this is what feels so natural for me to just like storytell about. And it clicked in my brain. I was like, this is what you've been trying to search for in your career of trying to humanize people through storytelling and find connection through storytelling. I just never had the verbiage. And
tell them what the piece was about because they'll
it was about when I was 22, I did something called the Hoffman process.
And knew you would know. I was like, exactly. Yeah.
I feel like I sound like a broken record because I talk about it all the time, but it really did change my life. I grew up, both my parents had attended, and growing up in Miami, that was not a thing. And I never really had a great understanding of what it was. For those listening that are not familiar, it's like, I call it like a week-long therapy camp that's, you know, dedicated to understanding your patterns, you know, that they come from mom and dad, what caretaker, whatever, going through that sort of cycle of the compassion, forgiveness, release, introduce new behaviors, that whole sort of thing. And I'd grown up just hearing about it. And then when I graduated from school, I was about to move to New York and just like having a little bit of an existential crisis, and looked at my mom and I was like, hey, you know, I'm ready. Like, I want to go. And music to her ears because she had been trying to get me to go. However,
Sounded good on your mom.
Yeah.
And so I went and completely changed my life. And I'd never spoken about my mental health very publicly at the time when I went. Like, you know, friends were supportive. Like my childhood friends were very supportive, but then it was always like the rumor mill of, you know, the people being like, oh, Gabby's like, she cracked. Like she's in a hospital, like she cracked.
Mhm.
And I was like, whoa, that we don't talk about this.
Mhm.
And so this was before the pandemic as well. This was like right before the pandemic hit that I wrote the article. So I remember being nervous about it because I was
Mhm.
like, okay, like, do I have to ask my boss? Like, you know, I represent this company, whatever. And so, yeah, so from there, the pandemic, I wrote that article, the pandemic hit. I started an Instagram live show where I was just talking about our mental health and our feelings. And I was still at Condé Nast at the time. And like, I was just trying to get these stories out there. And Meadow was my first guest. And there was like live footage of us. Like,
It's so
falling
cute.
apart. I mean, like,
We're like looking at each other like this on Instagram Live, you know?
and then very quickly after that, we were just on the phone one day, just talking. I was like, we should start a podcast. And then like a year later, it happened. Long-winded, but that's how it happened.
Yeah. Just a random throwaway. Architectural Digest is like my porn. So I just thought
I mean, isn't it though?
but
yeah.
you're a Taurus, right?
Exactly. I mean,
Like-
come on. Yeah.
She's like, oh God.
Why do you think we walked in? She's like, your home has such good energy. Like, we're like,
Yeah.
it all adds up.
But I love that your parents both went to Harvard.
Oh my God.
Like, can
Yeah.
we just-
Amazing. Can we stop there for a second?
I gotta give them their kudos.
That's
for real.
incredible. So do you feel like you grew up with mental health and the conversations being something that was like, well, let's talk about it
accessible?
normalized? And
They tried.
Yeah.
Like they tried. I think my mom for sure. My dad, it was like my parents they separated when I was really young. But I remember my dad like left, came back, and was like different. I was very little when he went. I think I was like 7 or 8.
Oh, wow.
And different in a really good way.
Oh, so he did it, you're saying?
Yes,
Oh,
he did
okay,
it.
okay.
And then left to Hoffman. I mean,
Yeah,
did that. I didn't know where he was, but he came back and he was like very like calm.
Mm.
And then my mom went when I was 16, 17. And so she, to her credit, I mean, both my parents are Cuban immigrants. This is not something I grew up talking about at all. So to particularly my mom's credit, like she tried.
Yeah.
She really tried to make sure that we felt like we could talk about it. And I wouldn't say like the verbiage was there, but again, it's like she tried.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and it was always, the opportunity was always like available to us, which I think is huge.
Wow.
Mhm.
Man, how different so many of our lives would be
If you had that,
if we had that
even the
accessibility.
trying, that's
Even the trying.
That's incredible. And I think what I love about your podcast is the two of you do such a beautiful job of like, you know, just normalizing so many of these conversations and ushering it in. Was that a little bit of your experience, Meadow, with like with mental health?
In terms of, family wise?
Yeah.
Yes and no. Mental health was so talked about in our family because we had a slew of mental health issues. Like I have a sibling from a really, really young age that had a really hard time and cycled through every diagnosis under the sun. I'm talking like schizophrenia diagnosis in 4th grade in early 2000s. Right. So that changed a lot. I had an older
Look at
brother
my face.
die
I'm
by
like,
suicide.
tell me this therapist name that diagnosed a kid that's 10 years old with
And then
schizophrenia.
the medication at that time was really bad. So I come from a family that had a lot of mental health struggles. So it was so open in our family to discuss them,
Yeah.
but not publicly.
Sure.
And I had an older brother when I was 14 died by suicide. And I remember like no one would speak about, you know,
Jesus.
my parents at first told us it was an accident because suicide was so stigmatized.
Mm.
And I found out on accident a year later. But so mental health was so talked about because it was so chaotic
And present.
growing up and present in my family. But I'm so grateful for it because my mom was really the one that we both have older half siblings. And my mom in our little nuclear unit was really the one to be like, no, we talk about this now. Like so involved. She was in education her whole life. So like involved in my brother's, all his IEP meetings and figuring out support for him. And so it was always really, really open. But it wasn't until college that I kind of ran into, other people outside of my family won't talk about it. Like I was trying to share about experiences or, you know, classic, like sitting down in the dorm and getting to know people. How many siblings do you have?
Yeah.
And like naturally would come up, 2 of mine have passed. And then when you kind of dig into that, people like were like, whoa, and didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I was like, I've been in therapy since I was 16. Like I'm healed.
Yeah.
Like if this is something that I'm just trying to share a piece of myself with you. Like I'm not asking, we're not trauma dumping or we're not trying to do this whole thing. And I kept running into that. And then I started immediately found a job on campus working in the counseling and psychological services. I was like, oh, here's my people. And then from, I think that moment was like destigmatization is clearly what I'm here to help do.
Yeah.
And that's like what I felt with her it was just this like very kismet dynamic that we had, but it was really because it was a space for us to just be able to like talk, and it wasn't trauma dumpy.
Yeah.
It was just understanding each other on a human level. And I think it was, I was like 23 when we met, 24. So it was like entering into these new adult friendships. Like all the other friendships that I had were these lifelong childhood friends. And so that's obviously such a beautiful, deep understanding you have one another. So it's interesting when you make friends as adults, because you're like, okay, how quickly are we gonna get to know each other? Like, what's the dynamic here, whatever. And
we were
with Widow, it was just like this natural, cool progression. And on top of like, that's really why we wanted to start the podcast. Was we felt like, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, we were like, okay, thank God we're talking about this, right? Like, thank God we're talking about it. But the narrative that we were seeing, it was very toxic positive, or it was really unapproachable. It felt like it was like this sort of, othered perspective, I feel like. And we were like, okay, but how do we make this normal? Where it doesn't need to feel like you're a fucking Hallmark card of a person walking around, but also like where it's not so medical. Like, how can we just talk about this like normal people, where it also doesn't feel like heavy when we leave the room?
Or that's like all you're talking about, right? Like there's that balance, which I feel like now I'm watching people, I think, especially coming out of the pandemic, also generationally, right? Like I think Gen Z is a little bit different, that it almost sometimes feels like, because I was working in counseling centers and high schools as well, it almost feels like a lot of the kids that are kind of younger, that generation, it's like they lead with that stuff. And I don't know that that's also like, to use the word healthy, whatever that means, right? Air quotes, but like that also isn't healthy. It's almost like in a lot of ways we've kind of swung the pendulum. And I feel like there are some of us that are trying to be like, well, what does it feel like to kind of swing that back into the middle? Because what we don't want to do is go back to like the Gen X and Boomer days where we didn't talk about it at all. Right. And we don't want to go so far that it's what we're leading with and it's all we talk about. So it's like, what's
or like the
middle?
TikTok rhetoric of what boundaries mean is so inappropriate. It's, so that pendulum swing is something we speak to all the time. But I think all of our personal conversations were also very much not being afraid to learn out loud. Like in real time, we wanted to be like, I was triggered by this thing and this is how I feel about it today. And now tomorrow I learned something new and my perspective's different, or unpacking the sister wound or sex trauma or any of these things that every time we would meet, we would kind of shift our perspective, because you just get new information and learn and change and process feelings. And we weren't seeing anything that showed that process. And I think we don't really talk about this anymore, because I think people are holding space for nuance in a new way. But at the beginning, it was very much in antithesis of cancel culture. Like, how are we supposed to be able to grow and change and learn out loud without being afraid of being canceled or being this or being labeled something? Like, the whole reason the show's called Thoughts May Vary is because we want to show up every time and have a different opinion. If we do, right? Like, maybe we don't,
and
but
it can
maybe
be
we
okay.
do. And that can be totally okay.
And also just showing people like the dynamic. And this was so not even, I don't even think this part was intentional. It just happened naturally, but just showing people and being like, you can have friends that don't think like you.
Oh, totally.
And, like, that's super fine, because I don't.
And
think,
in fact, healthy.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so we disagree
Healthy,
all the time,
right?
right?
Yeah.
And we, like the same way you were saying, like you guys lead very different lives, but have complete and total respect for the other one, how the other one lives. And I think that's something that, with this concept of cancel culture and with this like echo chamber society, if not everybody's agreeing with everything you're saying all the time. And like, look, we always give the caveat of like, I'm not hurting you. I'm not, we're keeping all that stuff away. But like, if we just disagree, like that's okay.
I love that.
That's fine.
And I think that was one of the things that I was struck by when I've been listening to your podcast, is that there is so much, let's make it okay for us to have conversations with people that don't agree. And you probably will be activated by some things I say, and that's okay. But Meadow, I was struck when you said like, there's more room for nuance now, or that like people are starting to, do you find that's true? Like, is it like age? I'm like, really? Like, who are these people and maybe it's a little bit that I think Vanessa and I are a little bit older than like maybe your audience, but do you find that's true?
That's why I think that's true. Like, I don't necessarily, I see it in our friend group. I don't necessarily see it online if I'm scrolling through my For You page. But I think watching the way our community and our listeners have responded to things we say has given me so much hope. Like, oh, people are out there looking for this too. And are really feeling this too.
I feel
and
that
we're
more in our
small and
community
mighty show.
than I feel like our private community for sure. I feel that the out there in the Instagram world, not so much.
Speaking of the world in general, but I love hearing that.
It's definitely percolating.
I am seeing though the pendulum start to swing a little bit in my algorithm, and it's making me happy, because I think I've started to see a lot of people have that narrative of like, it's fine if we don't agree, and it's fine if, you know, XYZ. So I have faith.
You know what's ironic? I think it's because it's an election year. I think people are kind of holding space for that, at least in our corner of the internet, in a new way of like, so how are we going to move forward and be in community together while disagreeing?
I couldn't agree more. And here's why. I actually said this to my brother recently.
Really?
I said, as sad as it is for us to be in the state that we're in, I literally just said this a month ago. I go, it's the first time that I have felt that we're actually all united about something.
Right?
Like we're all looking at it going,
being like, this
can't
can't
be
be
it. Like, is this really what's reality? And for the first time, I feel like, you know, both sides of the aisle, we're all looking at it going, seriously? Like this? And I was like, as sad as it is that this is what it took to get here, there is actually something about being unified that I'm like, oh shit, I haven't felt this way in so long that it kind of feels nice.
Right? And I think that's letting people be like, okay, we could be on other sides of the aisle, but like if we're both seeing this eye to eye, how can we work together and like remain here? We say all the time, like people like to, especially on the internet, love to call for community, and no one wants to talk about conflict resolution or like actually how to stay in community together.
That part.
Oh my God. We just went on a rant about this recently. But yeah, I think it's giving me a lot of hope too. Ironically enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Will you talk some more about the conflict resolution? Because I'm always curious. I think that we have a style for when we have stuff come to the surface. And Vanessa and I really like to, when we have retreats, like model, like even in front of the group, like in real time, like we just had a fight, y'all.
Let's bring it into the
And here's what we did to work it out. And here's how we talk about the shadow stuff that came to the surface. But
I love that.
Yeah.
Helpful.
Yeah. So helpful.
How do you guys navigate it?
I was like, we don't really fight.
No, I mean, we disagree.
We absolutely disagree, but never. I think it's usually a lot of work. We'll disagree on how we approach work a lot, but we both respect each other's perspective. So I think usually we always find a compromise.
Yeah.
Personally, have we ever had a fight?
No. But I think it's because like, if it's starting to get to a place where something is bubbling,
we say it
it's
quick.
not like, love you. It's like not easy to work with like one of your best friends.
No.
No.
I mean,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gave me the same face I gave you. We both went,
yeah.
Like, we know.
It's super different. I mean, we were talking about, I don't know if we were recording yet, but it's like, I'm the most earth side, and she's like
floating away. Yeah.
And so, but it's good because we both need that balance, but we move so differently than running a business together. You have to find that balance and that compromise. So I think we just try and talk about it also from a place that's like not very personal. Like I'm not.
That's true. We're really good at not taking things personally.
This is just how I would approach this situation.
Yeah.
But I think it's so cool that you guys actually model that for your clients and for people that watch you, because that is something we talked about it a little bit in our episode when you were on today about how when I went through recently, months ago, my boyfriend and I were in this moment of like, we were just having this like big moment of contention in our relationship. And he is very good at being like, we're not mad at each other, we're mad at a problem. Like, let's take ourselves out of it for a second. We're on the same team. Like, let's look at it that way, which I've never had in a relationship before, especially like the man being the one to tell me that. I'm like, love this. But all I could reference was, you know, I don't want to involve my friends too much because at the end of the day, like, they're not the ones in the relationship. I'm going to get over it. I don't need them to now hate the guy or whatever because they know too much or whatever. And my reference point is like, okay, how did my family deal with things? And then it was weird because when I got to the point of being like, okay, we're going to actually choose to really like work on this and move forward, I felt so strange about it because that wasn't modeled for me. It was more like, it gets hard, you can leave.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I think I wish I had, like, that's so valuable for the people listening and watching you to have you guys as representatives.
Well, and I also think it's valuable to say, it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like, do not mistake the fact that we're doing this in front of you doesn't mean that we just like skip through these whatevers and it's no big deal. Like, to be clear, like, I felt this way. I felt panicked. I felt rage. I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And just to really be honest about like, this is what it brings up in me.
Yeah.
I'm okay with those feelings coming up because I've done enough work to say, fine. And now the conscious side of me is saying, all right, Vanessa, this is what we're going to do about it, right? Because the kind of more unconscious coming from my family side is to be like, peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ill conflict, cut it, done, right? And we can say like, that's a normal thing to feel for a lot of people. But when you've done enough work to say, nope, we're going to get back in there. And I think you're right. It's modeling that, because I think for a lot of us, whether it was just like we never saw conflict, and so we just believe that any conflict is bad, right? Which I think a lot of us have, which is why like even in front of our kid, like we will argue in front of our kid, like, and we do it purposely.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And obviously we're not screaming and throwing chairs, but I mean, we will disagree.
To show how to work through something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that there was one time actually where John and I got a little, like, it was probably one of our more heated, and neither one of us really had the wherewithal to kind of move it to another room, which I almost wish we had, because it did get a little more heated than I wish. But afterwards, I went over to her and I said, that was probably scary for you. Like, how did you feel about that? You know, seeing mom and dad that angry at each other, like, what was that like? And I kind of invited her into the conversation.
Cool.
I sure as hell never got that growing up.
Yeah.
You know, it was
Absolutely.
like, let's just pretend it never happened. Let's just act as if everything is fine.
Yeah.
Let's never talk about it again, you know? And it's hard to like change these narratives or do things differently than what you saw growing up.
Cycle breaking, baby.
Yeah.
That shit is so real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think another reason that it's been a priority for us to model that is that there's such a pedestalizing of romantic relationships and romantic love in our society. And I think there's so much about like the codependency that Vanessa and I never shut up about, that like will show up in our relationship or the underfunction or overfunction or dynamics. And we're like, it happens for us too. Something you said, Gabby, that I was curious about was this thing of like, sharing with our girlfriends, like what's happening in our partnerships. How do you both navigate that? Because I have thoughts, but I'm curious.
I know. I'm like, I do too. And I've had struggles, but
I mean, I went through a really emotionally abusive relationship for 4 years on and off when I was really young. And my friends in the beginning knew everything because I didn't know what was wrong. So I would share with them. I mean, I was 18 to 22. So like I was telling them, be like, this is normal. This is love. And then that was actually sharing with them is how I realized that it wasn't normal what I was going through. So I always urge people where I'm like, if you really think something is wrong, like you got to speak up and get like some sort of touch point. But I think now and I always hate being like the work that I've done, because I never want to sound, you know, holier than thou. But through the work that I have done and the trust that I have in myself and that I have in my partner now and our dynamic, I know what that baseline is. And I know that I'm safe with this man. And I know I love this man and I respect this man. So, you know, we've had moments where I'm like, when I'm really heated, I need to like download on somebody. And so I would call Meadow and I would just like be bitching. And I remember one time she said to me being like, well, now I'm angry at him. And I had to check myself because I was like, okay, again, with knowing that baseline of I'm safe here, I love him, I respect him, this relationship is healthy. I am inevitably, we're going to have points of contention. I'm the one that's in love, respect, all of that stuff. I can't be going and telling my friends who are going to have my back always all the details. All the details. Because I also want to respect the sanctity and how sacred I think our dynamic is. And so there's a line. It's hard. There's a line.
Because I feel like there have been times in our dynamic like that, you know, Vanessa will, and I think you do less of this now, to be honest, but there have been times when she and John have been challenged with something, and it's been hard, I think, a lot of times for me too, because I love and look up to John so much, and I would be so like, this is really hard because I'm experiencing a very different version of this person that I'd sort of pedestalized a little bit, and that's on me, but in a, you know, the light of what it is to be in a relationship with him. And I would be protective of her and I would get activated, and then they'd go clean it up and I'd be like, but I'm still not okay.
I'm not okay. I wasn't part of that repair. I also think too, I think that there was a time, I think as all long-term relationships will inevitably have, and multiple times, where you come into these cycles of like really deep contention, right? Where, okay, it's like the layers of the onion, and we've peeled back so many layers, and now we've hit a level where we're like, oh shit, like something massive has come up. And like, that's what relationships do. Again, whether romantic, friend, anything, it's like, it's gonna be a mirror and shit is gonna get gnarly at some point, you know? And I think there was maybe one time, I mean, I know for a fact about a year ago when I was in a place where it was probably the worst it's ever been for us. And I didn't know what else to do other than to kind of talk it out, right? Totally. And so, it is this realization after the fact of, number one, bringing somebody in and being really aware that you don't want to triangulate, right? Because that's also important, because I know myself. I can get myself into triangles. So if I'm talking to you about it and I'm alleviating my anxiety with you, I'm not going to go and talk to him about it. Like, I know that about myself. I am very conflict averse. Like in my natural state, I will avoid the shit out of conflict. So if I can talk to you about it all day, I don't have to go talk to him, right? Which I think is really important for people to understand about this idea of triangulation. Totally. It is exactly what you're saying, which is you're bringing her in and now she's kind of got this energy, or Danae has this energy, right? Of like, well, now I'm mad. But it's also a way that we can offset our anxiety and frustration and not have to go to the person that we're actually pissed at, right? Yeah, totally. And so that's part of why we do that. But also, there is a little bit of like, it's not that I don't share it now, but I'm more aware of now exactly what you're talking about, which is like, I don't want to bring her in on something that realistically I should be handling myself. Mm-hmm. And also that is going to cause some kind of weirdness in your guys' relationship. Mm-hmm. And then what I was going to say is the other thing that I took to heart that he spoke to me about around that time was, it feels like you and I are in whatever cycle we're in. You are going off to Danae, which he knew very specifically. You're going to Danae and your therapist about this, and you're sorting all of this shit out. And then it's like, what he said to me was really interesting. He said, then you're coming back to me and you've changed. Your behavior has changed. The way you're addressing something has changed, but I don't know how you got there.
Yep.
Right? And he's like, I'm not asking to be your therapist. It's just that like, it can feel a little bit like whiplash when you and I are in something, you've gone over here, you've sorted it out, and now all of a sudden you're acting different. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck?
Like, bring me into the perspective.
I cleaned it up with my wife. Yeah, right? Exactly. Clearly. And that was really, I was like, oh, that's a really good piece of feedback to hear.
Totally.
Because I think, again, being a little bit conflict avoidant, I have the tendency to go over here. I always say, right? Like, work it out over here off camera, come back with a bow on it and be like, here it is. Yeah. That's not intimacy. Yeah. That's not being vulnerable. Like, showing the messiness, the messy bits of like doing the like sorting through to that person is actually the vulnerability. It's actually the intimacy. Yeah. And I'm robbing the relationship of that if I'm taking it to you today, or taking it to my therapist to workshop and then coming back with a bow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You better.
Well, I don't listen to a lot. I don't think I struggle with the relationship side. Like, I don't think I've ever come to you being like, I'm so mad at Aaron. No. Like, that's not.
We've like talked about conflict, but it's
for
like
sure
already been signed, sealed, delivered by you two.
Yeah. We do that. Yeah. We're very good at bringing the messiness and working out in real time with each other and meeting where we're at. I struggle with the friendship side. Like, I think I'm a friend that a lot of friends come to. Yeah. And I've had to have my husband say to me, like, babe, you know, like, it's not your relationship. It's not your job. It's not your client. It's not like people will accept dynamics that look different than you want for yourself. Yeah. And that is really hard for me to piece together when I like love my friends so dearly and I want them to have what I want or love. Because in my head, that's the best form of love, right? Because it's right for me. But so then when I have to separate, like, my right form of love may not be your right form of love or other whoever. That's the part that I will kind of have to practice.
Yeah. That's like, because that is, I think a lot of times we want, you know, and a lot of times where we are in our process and what we've been through and, you know, like all the things, like everyone has to walk their path to understand what they're meant to know. And we're not responsible for other people's lessons. But when you love someone, it can be so activating to be like, that's not what I would do. Yeah. And that's like the dignity of that person's experience, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and also to get a little woo on it, it is like, what did you come here for? Right. What did you come here for? To like learn, work out, right? Integrate. And like what you came here to learn and integrate is not the same that I came here to learn and integrate, right? And I was just leading a group last night, actually, and it was, you know, I was codependency recovery, but I was talking about this idea of like letting people have their lives and their experience and, you know, who do you think you are and all that kind of stuff. And somebody said like, well, so what if somebody's in active suicide, you know, like a suicidal ideation? And I was like, listen, nuance, right? I don't know. You're not my client. I can't speak to it without knowing the details. I'm like, but it still kind of stays the same, which is like, they're not you, like, and you are not God. Like, you don't know what their soul was put here to experience, right? But what you can't do is rescue them from themselves. What you can't do is say, this is what I would do. This is what I think is best. And so this is what I'm going to force on you.
Okay. Can we dig in a little bit? Because you're preaching to the fucking choir.
Yeah.
Because one, my whole experience of mental health, my mom, my mom gave me a Ram Dass book when I was 14. Okay. So like in all of this stuff, explains so much. Like I'm obviously not a therapist, but worked in direct service for 10 years. And my own personal journey had to get to the point where like existentialism and philosophy comes into play. Like there's a certain point where it has to get woo-woo to kind of embody this stuff. And having someone that had a sibling that died by suicide, like I have very much changed my mind and pretty strongly disagree with the way we talk about suicide prevention or a way a lot of people. Yeah, I think there is a big thing of all suicide is preventable and all suicide is bad or sad or tragic. And I fundamentally believe that my brother is so much happier not being alive and had the hardest fucking time being alive. And if that was his story and right for him, like I still have we kick it all the time. On my drive up here, my brother was a truck driver. On my drive up here, I saw his exact truck crossing where my family home exit was. Yeah. I have selfies I'll show you guys after. You know, like we kick it all the time. And I love knowing that the veil is so thin and being able to have a relationship with someone else. And I do think that he needed to go the way he wanted to go.
There's a depth psychotherapist, Richard Frankl. He wrote a book. I actually have it here somewhere called The Adolescent Psyche. It's actually right there on my bookshelf. And a lot of what he talks about in this book, and this is the way that I think as a depth psychotherapist, I hold it to, is exactly what you're saying. Yeah. But it's also talking about, at least in adolescence in particular, how we need to talk about it differently, because there is something about the death drive that doesn't necessarily translate to tangible suicide, that we're so fucking terrified of, that we don't actually allow the soul and the psyche to go through this very normal process of talking about and bumping up against the death drive. And it was a phenomenal book that completely changed. Yes, so up my alley. The way that I looked at suicide, and just from more of an existential depth perspective, right? It's like we're so panicked about the idea. I mean, this is how we are with death in our society. We're so fucking panicked that we don't look at it. Yep. We don't experience it. We don't allow space for it. We don't breathe into it. And it can change us at a foundational level, but we're so afraid of it, we won't let it happen. Totally. You know?
I remember having conversations with my mom. We were like so French in this way. We're like, you ever just drive and see a cliff and think about going right off and you want to drive off it or like pull the wheel? Yeah. In no way do I want to die, but it's so normal as a human to have thoughts about like, and I think the more we suppress that, your beach ball analogy that you said, you know, the more we do that,
the harder it is.
The harder it is. And speaking of common denominators, like in the politic realm, what's more of a common denominator than grief and death? Right. So one thing we're all going to go through and we've all experienced. So like, it's the great equalizer. So we should talk about it.
Right. And that we're so conditioned to believe like we can't talk about it. Right. And so it feels like this, I don't know, like.
Yeah.
And I just love I want to go back for a second, the emotional maturity in the way that you were speaking to it, because I've always thought, thank you, my love. There's so many times when I have thought like, this is another form of like, I mean, it feels weird to say it this way, but like a codependent energetic that we hold around this. Agreed. Like if someone is in so much suffering day in, day out, they are not wanting to be in this body. But for me, I need them to stay in this body.
Oh my God.
Me loving them well, right?
On that dude.
Like I always think about that too, because if you are with somebody that is, whether it's a family member, whatever, a friend, that is going through that moment, like how do you then approach that?
Yeah, big breath. I think there's a lot of what you were saying, Meadow, about like curiosity around that experience, what that feels like to be in your skin, and that you and your soul do not belong to me. Like I do think there is a little bit of space, and I've had this conversation with clients in a way that I think has felt really liberating. I don't know that like what you're saying, that it is our job to say this is the worst possible thing ever, but also it's that thing that Vanessa and I talk a lot about, that Alan Watts was talking about. Like we fear death because we're conditioned to, right? Exactly. Like I have never heard someone talk about a near-death experience where they haven't been like, it was amazing. I didn't want to go back. And I'm like, so I don't know what happens when I leave this body, but I know that a lot of people that talk about it like it's pretty amazing. Now, that being said, I just think we need to be able to like be in the nuance and the curiosity around the conversation without so much fear, because I think it is so unbelievably isolating when that is the truth of what I'm feeling, but then everybody is like
trying to fix it and shut it down.
Yeah.
That was what I was going to say too last night in this specific arena that this came up. I was like, well, I think it's great that you're bringing that conversation in when we've been talking about sense of self. This was the topic.
Cool.
Right. And I said, because here's what, going back to the codependency piece, like we always do, the less I'm able to be with myself in my own hard shit, the more I'm going to shut your hard shit down and try to make it better and go away. Right. Yeah. So am I really supporting you in attempting to make your experience fit what I think it should fit and to make me feel more comfortable? Yeah. Right? That's not support. And if I can be honest about that, then I can say, okay, well, what would support actually be? Right? Can I be in relationship to this person as a support system, staying grounded in my body, staying grounded in myself without getting swept away? Because that's actually support. Right. Can I be this body, this grounding energy in this space for this person to kind of potentially tether onto, where I'm not going to sink, right? And I'm not going to get so like about it that they feel that. So I think it comes back again to this like relationship with self, this work on self. Listen, I'm a far better therapist. I'm a far better parent. I'm a far better friend, partner, because I've done this work on myself.
Totally.
Period.
Totally. Yeah. I love what you were saying, Danae, because I have such a poignant example of how I came to that perspective. So you're one of your favorite taglines or one of my favorite taglines of yours is your trauma has skill sets. And I think about, my dad died when I was a teenager and he was in the hospital for 55 days in and out of a coma. And it was this whole big trauma. And at first I was very much like, I do not want to be there when he passes. Like I was so scared of it. My dad was my best friend, like first soulmate. Like I say all the time, if I could only have him for 17 years, I would do it over and over again. I had the best dad in the entire world. But so at first I had so much fear around that. And I sat on his lap, basically. He was in a bed, but I like sat on his legs and watched my dad pass. Yeah. It was a lifetime fucking movie. It was the most beautiful, big breath, exhale. My entire body flooded with like the color yellow and warmth. And I heard like, oh, it's all good. We started laughing. Yeah. My sister, mom, and I started laughing. We were like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I don't think I would have like the peace and the understanding and the connection to death if I hadn't been there to see that. So it wasn't a near-death experience, but watching death to the person I loved most, like I'm so fucking grateful for that. Changed my entire life and experience to make me feel so much more in myself, so much safer, release so much fear. And as a teenager, I was like, what a gift.
This what a old gift. Soul right here. But but also
I've been reincarnated many fucking times. It's so clear.
It's like ridiculous. But also what you were saying about the thinness of the veil. And I think there is something around like when you have been close to death or people that are death doulas and are like in that space. You think that, I don't know what you'd think their experience is, but they are just so alive.
It's amazing.
Like, present in this life and
that energy.
The magic.
The mat. Ooh, yeah.
I'm like in awe of it. And I think some of that is that you start to like what you're describing in that like space when your dad left his body. It's like there's just an awareness of that you're sort of like in that magic all the time.
Totally.
I have a client who also lost a family member really young and was also there. She was like 20. And it was a very different experience for her, right? It was very traumatic for her to be in that room and watching her, die from cancer and all of these things. And we talked about it one time, and not just once. I mean, we were processing it for a while, but some of it was going back to this idea of how our culture doesn't talk about death and we don't look at it and we sterilize everything. And so one of the things that she started doing was apparently which makes sense, everything's on Instagram, but there's a couple death doulas on Instagram and what they have, at least this one woman, she actually, like, this is what death looks like.
Cool.
And so she blanks out their face, right? Like their eyes or whatever.
Cool.
And she'll show like, this is what it looks like to pass, right? And she does this exactly what we're talking about, which is to take the stigma out of it, to normalize it. Like, this is what death looks like. This is what it sounds like, right? And my client had this realization of like, holy shit, that's exactly what I experienced, right? And there was something in this like, oh, if I had only known that for the last 20 years, I wouldn't have been carrying around this horrible, this was traumatic. She was in pain.
Right.
It was this awful thing because she didn't know how to make sense of what she had experienced because no one had ever told her anything different, right? And there was something about watching a couple of these videos where she just had this immense sense of peace around it. And being like, oh, actually, I was witness to something really profound, really magical, really normal, right? And her entire perspective has changed on it.
I do resonate with that because I will say the body changes quickly. And I did not know that.
I know, my grandma was the same way. It was fast and it was wild to watch.
Right? Wild to watch. But also kind of like, kind of cool.
Cool at the same time.
Kind of cool because you're like, it was so it was so clear to all of us at the exact same time when the soul left the body.
Yes, totally.
So clear.
That's it.
That's
That's exactly what it was. You're so right. I felt the same way with my grandma. It was
so clear. And then you can look at a body and watch it change and be like, whoa, it's so not you anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the point of why you actually have to talk.
You have to talk
about it. Mental health. We're talking about grief, death, whatever. Because if you just have, I think about it with childbirth. Like, I want to know because I want.
Do you have it on video? Show us.
The only thing I will say about childbirth is, do you really want to know? Because that's the one area where I feel like if we knew, you would actually.
Short, fine, fair. Took someone who had a very short labor.
Not me. So
fair. We won't talk about it.
Yeah, I won't tell you about it.
But I say that to say, like, when you just at least have the information, you'll move differently than going in with this fear. I remember my boyfriend's grandfather passed recently, and during that time we were looking a lot online at like these nurses that have those Instagram accounts that will talk about what it's like to be in hospice and whatever. And I'm pretty sure that this happened where one of the nurses at the hospital came in to like explain to the family like what exactly is about to happen. And I think it just gave everybody more relief, peace, and knowing like, okay, we have our expectations like set. And then in the after, understanding that you weren't alone through that, like that, like your client, that she was like, okay, I would have known this, that I wasn't the only one that's grandmother was dealing with this, or went in that way, like, okay, maybe it's a little bit more.
Well, and then you look at like little kids, right? Which is so fascinating because my little one being 4, I've always used, like, my mom said something about like, oh, I'm talking about my grandmother, like, oh, she passed away. And my daughter was like, what? And I said to my mom, I don't use euphemisms. I don't use any of that. Like, I say she died. Like, she's died, she's dead. Like, I'm very clear about the words that I use and we talk about what it means. And when we started talking about that, there was a moment where she was very curious about it. She started getting very, very upset when she would find dead bees. There was a period where she was like wrecked about these bees, like crying. She was so upset. And so I had to like be with her through the tears. And then she moved from doing that a couple times to then one afternoon we were in the driveway and there was like 1 or 2 of them on the driveway. She started talking about it and she started taking her sidewalk chalk and drawing these beautiful mandalas all around these bees, completely not prompted by me, right?
I love
and like basically made me and her dad and her friends across the street. We had a little ceremony.
Totally.
She said some words.
I'm in love
This kid's never had personal experience with death, but it's like, it's innate. It's in innate. Us as souls. It's almost like we tramp it down.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is how actually we come in, is this reverence, this like, oh my God, it's so beautiful,
This is like my conspiracy theory again, because in the same way in your podcast where we talk about how the patriarchy is very deliberate in the way we split women and tamper their magic and innate connection to the world. Like, I wonder if there is, obviously there's still communities and cultures that do revere death and talk about it and acknowledge it. I wonder how strategic it is to separate us from that experience and what fear that leaves us in.
This is why you're my people.
Yes.
Here's why. I can't tell you how much I have had the thought over the last like 6 months as I'm watching the depth of the polarization and the fear coming to a head. And I'm constantly like, this is because we don't know how to have conversations about death.
Yep.
all of this is like the visceral, like people are dying and we're going to die and I don't want to like, and I don't know what to do with this. And we have no containment and no language for it.
That's right.
And so people are like literally
lashing out, trying to control,
so activated that they don't know what to do with it. So you're, like, and it's
your
like,
fault.
We need to like titrate a little bit into how we have conversations about death. And I love what you were saying, Gabby, about like, all of it is less scary, and even childbirth. I just want to circle back because I don't want to traumatize you. I think even with someone in the room, for me, that is like, all of this is normal. Like all of this is what happens. It is a lot less traumatizing. And I think attachment to like wanting certainty is what I've experienced when women have like a very specific birth plan. I have none.
Oh, listen, don't look at me like that when you say that. She goes, well, somebody has an attachment to certainty, and she like looks at me.
No, but it is. It's like,
hi, I'm a Taurus. I like things to be certain. Literally. Yeah, throw out the birth plan.
That's why they've got us. Yeah, but yeah, I think that is a little bit the traumatizing part, and death becomes that ultimate. We don't know. We can have an idea. We can sort of, but like we really struggle with the uncertainty of like what we don't understand or can't like quantify. Or
that weird guilt that lived in that intersection, I recognized so young, and I've like carried it through the rest of my life, but now have shifted the perspective of like, no, but that also kind of might be the point.
That is the point.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. You find those silver linings and you find I don't want to say the why, but it is.
Well, but it's also the why and the silver lining. I think in that it's not about like bypassing it. What I see the silver lining in that is a recognition as an adult, because you didn't have the understanding as a kid. Because I had a very similar experience when my great grandfather died. I remember that feeling of guilt and almost exactly like you're talking about. But the silver lining to me in that is the realization as an adult that you don't actually get to have joy if there's not grief. You don't actually get to have grief unless there is joy. Like they actually coexist. That's the yin and the yang. Like, and you don't have the language for that when you're young, right? And I actually think that is the silver lining, is to have a felt experience of, oh, they coexist. And they're not separate, you know?
Yeah. I love that. And that's a little bit of what I was going to say. Like when I talk to my child about like his grandpa, like I don't say grandpa's died. I say like he's left his body and that like he's still like so present with us. And I think because like his little brain, sometimes death can feel like
permanent.
Yeah. And that like I think so much of the suffering is like I talk about like I'm sad because I miss my dad and I wish I could still talk to him in the physical body, but also like I'm really aware of his presence. And I think there's something so beautiful about that, because children do have such an innate sense of like he will talk about like other lives.
Totally.
He did actually more when he was littler than he does now. But I think like they know.
Well, it's like my tattoo, right? Like you were talking about my tattoo. And so the monarch for me is around my grandmother, because I'm from upstate New York originally, and that's one of their migration paths. So like I have all these memories of being at my grandma's house where it's just like clouds of monarchs. And it was always just such a reminder of her. So my kid was again about 2 or 3, right? You know the story. And she had just gotten off a kick where she was obsessed with Moana for a while. I don't know if either one of you have seen Moana.
It makes me cry in the
her
first
grandma,
when the ocean
like how the grandma turns into the stingray.
Yeah.
And so we were having this conversation about my tattoo, and I was talking about monarchs and my grandmother and whatever. And I said, whenever I see a monarch, like I know, like that's my grandmother, because they're almost always just one, and it just kind of goes whoop in my face kind of thing, like the ones that really make their presence known. So I was telling her this, and she must have been like 3 at the time, maybe 2. She literally looks at me. She goes, so your grandma turned into a butterfly? Like, let me get this straight. Right. And I was like, well, I mean, kind of,
Visiting spirits.
But it's so funny because now, 2 years later, whenever we see a monarch, she's like, look, it's your grandma, you know? And there's a different, and she doesn't really think like, oh, that's your grandma. But in that moment, you could see her little brain being like, wait a second, But it's such a beautiful thing to kind of build on what you were saying, Danae, of like her relationship to death and what that means. I mean, she even is like, oh, look, and she's excited, and she never got to meet my grandmother. So to me, that is her way of being able to be in contact with her.
Totally.
I love that this is where we landed, and I would love to keep you both forever, but I think you're
just
gonna
I
know.
No, like, we can keep going. We can keep going. Don't worry about me. I'll cancel what I have. Don't worry about it.
Sure.
Truly.
All right, so we have a lightning round of questions that we ask all of our guests. So we're going to ask the both of you. Okay. So the first question, whoever wants to go first, is who have been your greatest teachers, mentors, people that have impacted your path, whether you know them or just you've really been impacted by their work?
I'm like, two come to my mind. This is hard because I could name 75 people, but like my first two immediately are like my dad and Ram Dass. Yeah. Ram Dass, bitch till I die. I mean, I have the tattoo. Like, yeah.
Could not love you more.
Yeah. I mean, kindred spirits in this room, obviously.
Okay. I'm random. My high school English teacher.
I love that.
Dr. Stone. Hi, we haven't talked
Shout
in
out.
years.
Hi, Dr. Stone.
Yeah. He was one of the first, if not the first person in my life to really be like, not only are you a really good writer, but like you're an emotional writer and you need to feel into that. And his class, my senior year of high school, we were doing this, it wasn't like pen pal, but we basically were doing a partnership with this women's prison that was in Florida. And we would all read the same books. They were taking an English class there, and we'd all read the same books. We'd get the exact same prompt. And then we would have like a buddy and we'd swap essays. So we weren't allowed to talk. It wasn't pen pal where we were like talking about their crime or anything, but we were commenting on each other's writing. But in that, it was so personal, and it became so much more. We weren't like checking each other's grammar. It was like our interpretation of their writing, and it was so powerful and so profound. And it was the first experience that I had outside of like my bedroom, being able to explore that sense of writing and the power of connection through words. And that class was he was just so, so impactful for the way that I think I moved in the world differently from then.
God, good teachers.
Yeah.
Next level.
As you were saying that, I was thinking how important it is, because we don't always think to do this. If you see someone's gifts, speak to them, because you can be speaking so much life into someone's path.
My mom always says that.
Changes them forever. I just was so
can't hold compliments in. Like if you genuinely think something
always tells
you can't hold compliments, you have to give that to someone.
I remember a friend's mom was like, "You're really smart, and like your intuition is what makes you so smart." Nobody had ever told me I was smart in my whole life, and I remember I was like,
"Yes,
someone thinks I'm smart,"
and you still remember it. I mean, look,
and it was like literally 15 years ago, but it was like a moment of like,
yes. What did I always tell you? My mom's best friend, growing up, she's like a total healer, like spiritually inclined, tapped in, amazing.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, she, when I was really young, would always tell me, "You're a really powerful manifester," and I like didn't really know what it meant. I was like, "What?" She's like, "You're really good at wishing." So like hone in on that, and that's been burned in my brain ever since.
And we'll get to talk about this. I've been told by so many people that my kid is like essentially like an intuitive, like she was born that way. Like
I don't doubt that for a
three
second.
different astrological readings have been like, no, like this is beyond what we're used to. This is like next level, but you have to foster it. And I'm like, I don't know how to foster it. So now I'm gonna call you, and you can help me foster it for her.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so the next question is around this concept of flow, right?
Cool.
So we kind of all know what flow is. It's like when everything aligns, right, and you get lost in something. What is that? Like, what are you doing when you find flow?
Okay, wait. I just had an entire meeting yesterday about something that we're going to have to speak to later again as add to our long agenda at this point. But I have a theory that many of the anxieties, not all, can't blanket statement, many of the anxieties we experience are unused flow state energy.
Ooh.
That's like a big theory of like my philosophy.
I know, right?
No, I'm building an entire program around it. We have to talk about it.
I love this.
I for me, flow state is anything that's any modality in the world. It could be drawing mandalas around bees. It could be dancing. It could be in conversation. It could be like no matter what it is, to me, it's getting embodied and out of my head, air sign.
That's right.
To feel around what I'm experiencing and express myself.
Yeah.
That's flow state. Like it doesn't matter what the task is, but it's this like alchemization of energy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because same. Yeah. It's I'm so in here.
Yeah.
And so that's why Hoffman was so powerful for me, because it forced me to get into my body. And so anytime that I lose myself in that, the first thing that came to my brain is when I'm writing, and then I'll like go and read something and I'll be like, I fucking wrote that?
Yeah, remember.
Who did that? Me? Like, wow, she's talented. And I will, where you feel like something's like downloaded through you.
Yes,
but it's that when you're just feeling, I feel it a lot. I think about myself like when I float in the ocean.
Oh, totally.
And you just feel it holding you. Not here, because how you bitches swim in this water? I'm like,
I know.
Don't look at me. I don't swim in this water. It's too fucking cold.
No.
I'm from the East Coast too. I'm used to the Atlantic.
In Miami,
I
grew up
this.
in Miami. Like I float. There's not a wave. I'm like peaceful.
And it's warm. It's like 80 degrees.
Yeah. So that I think about that, where you're just being supported by something that's like not you.
It's womb energy for sure.
Yes. That of just giving in to like this that is so much greater and powerful, and just letting it hold you.
So this is what we talk about. This is why this question is still here, because even though some people might be like, oh, I'm in flow when I'm running, right? Or whatever, it actually usually transpires into something like this, which is like, what does it really mean? You know, which I love.
To you. And what breaks your heart?
Oh my God. Dead bees.
I mean,
I think
a lot of stuff.
For me, it's when I watch people really betray themselves.
Oh,
it hurts. I did that to myself for a long time. And being able to get out of that. After, I'm telling you, that's some Hoffman, man, fucking changed my life in that way. When I watch it happen to anybody, whether I know you, love you, whatever, it breaks my heart.
I'm so sensitive. Everything breaks my heart. Like truly. Dead bees, watching someone betray themselves, Gaza. Like everything in the world breaks my heart. But I'm so, again, God, Ram Dass too. You, Hoffman, me, Ram Dass. Like take a shot every time. But that like keeping your heart open in hell, that poignancy of like, that shows me how good everything is. Like I feel so deeply into joys and so deeply into sorrows, but I'm pretty good at holding space for both at the same time. Everything in the world breaks my heart.
God, me too.
Right.
I so resonate.
I'm so sensitive.
I think I've spent a lifetime trying to like not be the super sensitive person that I am, right? Because obviously, whether it's society, family, it's like you get kind of beat up for that.
It's also hard. Like there's TV shows that I'm like, I'm way too affected by this to watch. You know what I mean?
There's whole genres of movies and TV that I don't watch because it will stay with me for weeks.
Exactly.
Right? And my kid now is crying at movies. She's at that stage, and I'm like, oh girl, I see ya. Let's just sit here and cry at this Pixar movie together. You know what I mean?
Pixar will do it to you
every time.
Oh my God.
Okay, and the last one. What's your favorite food?
Oh God.
I'm so excited everybody gets on this question.
Oh my God. Well, no, we just
did Taurus. Hello.
We recently just did our like death row, like our last meal would be.
Yeah. It's just my mom's Cuban food.
Yeah.
That's right.
I want black beans and rice.
Yep.
I want the maluros.
Yep.
I want the ropa vieja on the side and the chicken with the onions. I want a croqueta with some lime.
Chocolate lava cake.
And then I want a chocolate lava cake.
Yeah.
She knows mine.
Yeah.
Do you love it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we just
talked about. I have to have like lumpia or ponce, some Filipino food. I'd have to have some sort of like sushi sashimi. I have to have a BLT, sourdough bread, heirloom tomatoes, Kewpie mayo.
Oh my God, you guys are really my people.
Yeah.
I'm like so hungry right now.
I said I want like a coffee, an orange wine, and a red wine. I want like it's just
sample platter.
I want 7 desserts. I don't know. I want too many things.
Oh,
there's too many favorite food. Pleasure. And like, ask me in what phase of my cycle I am, and my favorite food would probably change.
Yeah. Wow. What's yours?
Yeah, I know. I need both your answers.
I want the food answer. Yeah.
I mean, hers is mac and cheese
all day, every day. Ooh. Like I always say, if I could bathe in it, if it was socially acceptable, I would just take a bath in macaroni and cheese and just eat it. I just can't.
Totally.
My stomach, on the other hand, does not really agree with that anymore. But
I have such a juicy mac and cheese
world.
recipe I'm going to send you. There's a place growing up. It was called Cafe Chloe. It's closed now. It's my like every birthday, everything French restaurant that does like the thick lardon, like 4 types of cheese, the baked top, like.
Oh God. Okay, my stomach is actually growling. Hopefully, we're not picking this up on the microphone.
What about you today?
I mean, all the desserts, and it's tough to pick one. But nowadays, like vegan sushi from Planta and Marina. Ooh. Oh my God. I was just telling Vanessa they have like an all you I shouldn't tell the world because I'm going to be there on Mondays. They have like all you can eat sushi on Mondays. And it's next time you come, can you come and stay over
Let's
Monday?
Do a date.
Let's do a Monday night date. All you can eat.
So
good.
Wait, that's funny because I grew up my whole life. My mom's #1 rule is no sushi on Mondays, but you said it's vegan. It's not fish.
No,
because the whole thing
is
like
the whole thing.
The fish is out by Monday. Yeah, no
throw
sushi
it out on Mondays. It's like whatever's left.
But if it's vegan, I'm down. Let's go. Yeah. Loophole.
Oh my God.
This was so fun.
I know. We're going to do this 100 more times.
Like,
yeah.
You're stuck with us now.
Yeah,
please.
Absolutely.
I knew Vanessa would be too.
Absolutely.
I was like, oh, you have to meet these two because they're like sent to us. But
we're kindred spirits.
Yes, thank you for coming on. We cannot wait to have you back.
Yes.
And we'll tell everyone where they can find all of your things. I forget
all of
we're
your
doing
things.
a podcast.
Yes,
tell people where they can find you if they want more.
Shameless plug.
So you can find our podcast anywhere you can get your podcasts and on YouTube. We're at Thoughts May Vary Pod on all the social things.
Instagram, TikTok.
Yep, all the channels. I'm at Gabby Ulloa, GABYULLOA _ on all the social things.
Mine.
At It's Meadowlark. There
Thank
you go.
Mm-hmm.
You can find
Meadowlark
all
is
the
one
links
word.
there.
It's not my last name. People get very confused.
Mm-hmm.
I go by Meadow, but my full name, it's like William Will.
Yeah, and there
Everyone
you go.
thinks
That's
it's
how you say
Meadowlark.
my last name.
Meadowlark.
Ulloa. No one ever knows.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Stalk us. Come hang out on the
No,
webs.
we intend to.
Yeah. Don't worry. We're already stalking.
You've already been stalked.
Hi.
It's perfect.
Oh, this is so fun. Thank you guys.
Thank
Thank you,
so much.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.